Thank you. I spent a long time wondering whether I should have lots of photos, as we've seen in the last two presentations. And I decided to go for the other extreme. And my reasoning was partly because I'm not sure people in the audience will relate so well to the photos, but I hope the ideas will resonate as something which are global truths. So the tales I'm going to tell are from our experiences over the last... I've been working in a Kenyan university for the last 6 years. I've just recently started with the Next Einstein initiative, and so I've now got a more regional role. And I've got really 4 tales to tell, and I will tell them very quickly because I only have about 1 minute for each. So we'll start with improving grades. And this is about computer-assisted maths rather than computer-based maths. But I think it's important to notice that, even within the current curriculum, the current contexts, if we do use the computer, we can really improve the teaching in remote areas with mobile phones or whatever. It's very, very simple. It's easy. We can do this. The ideas from Khan Academy, everybody talks about, everybody uses in different ways, but we can't get them in Africa because the download's too big. But there are solutions we can use. I've got a student who's been using an electronic textbook and used it in a diploma course which was centrally examined. And we were able to find over a couple of years just trying this out that on average the students who used the electronic textbook and the automated assignments got 10% higher grades than students who did not, simply from having access to technology in a very simple way. And this was independent of teacher. So he got one of his colleagues to use it one semester, their grades went up 10%. There was a very startling sort of bit of the data. When you really looked at the data, there was 1 year where he was using it and his colleague was not. And the grades were almost totally disjoint. There was one student in the other class who was sort of somewhere amongst his bottom students, and otherwise they were disjoint. And when you looked at the grades further, when you looked at all the other subjects, in every other subject, that student was the top student of the class overall. In every other subject, she outperformed everybody else by a long way. And by not having access to the textbook and to the electronic resources, it put her, 10-15% below the top students in the other class. And it really is very simple. And we can do this, we can do it easily. The second thing is, we talk about the fact that, I don't know, in the African context, everyone will tell you, yes, we hate mathematics. There's no other subject, where parents would happily tell their children, it's okay, you don't need to be good at maths, I wasn't good at maths. You'd never heard someone say, it's okay, you don't need to read, I wasn't good at reading. This would never be said. There's no subject where that would be said other than mathematics, and yet we hear it time and time again. One of the saddest things I've had in Kenya is repeatedly, one of the problems that we hear about with girl students is they are told constantly by their male teachers, girls can't do maths. This is cultural reinforcements of these ideas, which is coming out time and time again. And yet we can reach people in a really easy way using technology. How many agriculture students do you know who say statistics is my favorite subject? Yet they achieved this very simply in University of Nairobi, just by introducing computers and changing their curriculum a little bit. And it happened within a year or two. They'd managed to achieve this, and this is what their students were saying. Within another 2 years, the computers were out of date and they hadn't renewed the lab, and so it wasn't working anymore. So there were problems of consistency, there's problems of scaling this up. But we know these things work, and this is important. We introduced an e-learning research methods master's program, and we had lawyers apply, we had medical doctors apply to do this. Everybody knows they need this. We had researchers, we had government officials, teachers, all wanting the education that they're not able to get and willing to pay for it. Again, this was then because there were problems making this sustainable. But, you know, we know that the demand is out there for this, and yet we're not satisfying that demand. One of my favorite projects, and the most enjoyable thing, you know, all of these seem to come from many of my students, but one of my students got me to start going into schools properly. And we started with teachers, and then eventually we started these maths camps, and we've been running them in Kenya now for 3 years, so we've had a maths camp every year for the last 3 years. And last year we invited someone from Ethiopia to the camp, and they then have held their own camp in Ethiopia this year, and so we were there helping them with that. And it's been, you know, the things we do are things you can relate to because they're exactly the same as we're hearing about happening in the US, and we know from the UK are happening as well. So when one of our streams we did programming, the programming exercise that happened earlier, we get kids to do this to solve puzzles. We put puzzles up and we tell them to write a little program, move forward, turn right, until they go through a maze. And, you know, just getting that level of abstraction into the coding is very easy. You don't need a computer to do that, but you need the ideas. In fact, we were very proud, actually, one year. We had 5 streams, and the only stream where we didn't use the computer was programming. We were teaching programming without the computer, everything else with the computer. It works, and it's really, really good. Just to give you an idea of how much this works, there's a number of different stories I can tell, but my favorite is we had a volunteer that came back this year who was a final year student last year and asked, you know, can I come back to the camp? And we said, not as a student. If you're going to come back, you have to help out. And so he came back and helped out, and we got his story. And the year before, he didn't want to come. His mother forced him to come to the camp. And he was 2 months before his final school exams, and he'd just done his mock exams, and he'd got a C- in mathematics and a C overall in his overall grade. And you need a B to get to public funding to go to university. And so he wasn't going to make it to university. And he came to the camp, and at the end of the camp, he was now, you know, his attitude had changed enough that he said, you know, I now realized I can do maths, I can do this. And so I worked really hard at it every day. And he ended up getting an A- in mathematics 2 months later in the final end of school exams, and a B overall. There's nothing we teach in the maths camp which is related to the curriculum. And this, we were really pleased and really surprised by this. And then we thought carefully about this. And going from a C to a B meant he had a 21-point increase in the Kenyan system. And going from an from a C- to an A- is a 6-point difference. So across his other subjects, he'd also had a 15-point difference. And so we asked him about this, and he said, well, of course, as soon as I could do the maths, everything else was easy. And so, you know, it's not just, maths isn't important just for the maths. You know, it makes a difference across the board. It's the limiting factor often. And, you know, it's a very little thing that works. We run the camp in Kenya with 0 external funding. The students come and they pay less than $50 each to attend, and those that can't afford, we try and find ways to sort of subsidize in different ways, so we get people from schools that can't afford, and just get relatively small numbers. The one in Ethiopia, the university covered, and the model is working with literally no money in it. So the limiting factor isn't money, the limiting factor is actually knowledge and the people to do it. And this is why I moved this year. So I was working in a Kenyan university for the last 6 years, and I eventually had to admit that I could never hope to change the system from within an African university, which was my original belief. And I've joined a group who I think are the best maths initiative in Africa, which is AIMS, the African Institute of Mathematical Sciences. And they have their Next Einstein initiative, which came out of a TED Prize in 2008. The AIMS is really centered on its master's program. And this is a wonderful example of where what's happening in Africa is world-class. And I do not know of a better master's degree anywhere in the world for what it is. It is, without a doubt, the best degree in the world. I mean, it's a degree which includes pure maths, applied maths, computer science, statistics, entrepreneurship, physics, all within the same master's degree. it creates very broad and interesting individuals. Every 3 weeks, they have 3 new international lecturers that come in from top universities all over the world. There was one year in Senegal where they had, I don't know how many Fields medalists who came and taught them. I think it was between 3 and 5 within the same year. How many programs boast that? You know, this is a world-class education tailored for African students in Africa, and it's really producing the most amazing students. The outcome of this TED Prize was a vision to have 15 of these institutes throughout the continent. And this takes you from 50 to 60 graduates a year. Currently, we're at 180. By next year, we'll be between 200 and 250 graduates. When the full 15 centers are up and running, that'll be 750 top-class mathematical science graduates coming out at master's level every year. And these are then going to be the real agents of change. I can't be the person there making the changes happen in one university, because the university systems need more people to do this. So we need to create that generation who are going to make this change happen. And the 2 other parts to the program are research and outreach. And the outreach is where it then gets very interesting and very exciting for me. And so there's real ways to affect real change. And I think it's important to remember what was said right at the beginning this morning. Where should we be looking for the changes in computer-based maths or in real educational innovation is not going to happen in the US, the UK. I'm excited to be working in Africa. I've been working in Africa for the last 6 years, and I will continue to work in Africa because that's where the real change is going to happen. This is where you can have the change not happening in 25 years, 20 years, but in 5 years. We could have a simple generation of change created within a 5-year cycle. We could transform an education system from the ground up within a really short period of time, and the impact could be huge. I still remember Conrad's first talk, where he talked about the fact that, you know, the country which makes this happen, their economy will leapfrog others. This is the desire for all African countries at the moment. They all have a Vision 2030, Vision 2020, Vision 2025, whatever it is, where they dream of that development rate which allows them to leapfrog. And they will take innovation to do it. Mobile money started in Kenya in a really exciting way. They will use the mobile phone, and it will be exciting in the way that it happens. But it's more than that. If we can use international experts to design, as AIMS have done, the programs of the future, then Africa might be the place to make them really happen, and we can learn from that. The whole world can learn. And that's really why I'm so excited to be working in Africa. Thank you.